Lucifer's true masterstroke came in the year 1859, when he used his unwitting servant, Charles Darwin, to publish a book entitled The Origin of Species. This publication paved the way for the establishment of a new religion, the religion of evolution. This event was and remains to this day one of Lucifer's most brilliant moves. Hijacking the prestige of science, the enemy of mankind deceitfully undermined Christianity without resorting to burning a single Bible or the violent persecuting of a single believer. It was, however, in reality, a reworking of the original lie told by the serpent in the Garden of Eden, "Ye shall be as gods." Timing is everything. Satan understood that at this moment in history men would be more receptive to this most obvious falsehood. Earlier attempts had been made to establish the concept of evolution, with Lamarck and even Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles Darwin. But it did not stick. Now conditions were perfect. Being in the middle of an industrial revolution and witnessing all its material wonders, the people believed in progress. Why not therefore expand this concept to biology? Men, especially the intelligentsia, were ready to accept Darwinism for another reason. This was the old classic, pride of life, one of Lucifer's chief mechanisms of controlling mankind. Many today will refuse to admit it, but one of the main grounds for the rapid acceptance of evolution was racism, one of the chief embodiments of the pride of life. The title of Darwin's book was simply not just The Origin of Species, as it has been cleverly shortened to today. Its title was in fact The Origin of Species by Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. It was that last part that was a key selling point. For the proud intellectuals of the West, who could be considered more favored at that time among the so-called races of mankind than they. This demonic doctrine additionally insinuated that this evolutionary progress of all of the species was a result of natural selection or survival of the fittest. In this religion, life was as a result of the ongoing struggle among the various species for the scarce resources of the planet. In this inversion of reality, life in all its spectacular variety was the result of death, i.e., natural selection. This not-so-new religion was in its essence the worship of death. But for the European intellectual, this new belief system was manna from heaven. Evolution in its demonic brilliance had the ultimate liberating effect. Western man, by their acceptance of this death cult, now felt themselves freed from the moral restraints of Christianity. They were now not accountable to any god. They could now exploit to the fullest the West's technical, cultural, and military advantages. The world was theirs to conquer and exploit. Evolution, now totally accepted in today's deceived world, has over the decades proven itself to be the gift that keeps on giving. It is and has been the primary source of all the deadly isms that has plagued the 20th century and beyond. It gave birth to scientific racism, the pseudoscience of eugenics, inspired socialism, and is a key component in secular humanism and scientism. This demonic doctrine from the time of its publication was greedily seized upon by the Germans. It perfectly suited their sense of manifest destiny. This new religion was heavily promoted in Germany with evangelistic fervor by noted fraudster and proto-Nazi Ernst Haeckel. Within a few decades of the Origin's publication, the leadership class of Germany completely embraced its tenets, causing a spiritual dam to break. A demonic portal was opened, and the demons of old flooded back into Germany, they returned with a vengeance. Wotan, the ancient god of war and death, had made his triumphant return. The effects of this spirit's return was immediately felt at all levels of society, as clearly seen in the philosophical writings and cultural offerings of the period. It was particularly manifested in the yearning, especially after the unification of the German nation in 1871, for the Germans to rid themselves of what some described as the foreign influence of Christianity. With its talk of love and universalism, Christianity was now regarded as not sufficiently German. It was seen as a Middle Eastern import, which not only restrained the nation from reaching its full potential, but whose ideals were harmful to the evolution of the German people. To rectify this supposedly sad state of affairs, the Kingdom of Darkness utilized the services of one Richard Wagner. A highly talented musical composer, his job was to make paganism sexy again. His grand operas and symphonies made him, in effect, a literal propagandist for Wotan and the pantheon of old Germanic gods. Under his artistic genius, the darkness of Germany's pagan past was presented in a glamorous new light. No longer was Germany's pagan past a history of war, barbarism, and its assorted depravities. Instead, it was now artfully presented as a world of romantic adventurers, a place where heroic gods, warriors, and maidens lived, loved, and struggled on a monumental scale against the tempests of life and the inconstancy of fortune. The Germans, newly liberated from their Christian constraints, were lapping it up. Following closely on the heels of Wagner in a quite literal sense, as he was a one-time disciple and devotee of the great composer, was the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. If ever there was a contest to determine the person who was most clearly possessed by a spirit of Antichrist, Herr Nietzsche would at the very least make the podium. It is rare in the history of mankind and the literary arts that the satanic kingdom was allowed to so clearly articulate their hatred of God and his Christ through so talented a medium. He literally wrote a book called The Antichrist, and was recorded as ascribing that same moniker to himself. Echoing his demonic masters, he expounded to his readers a philosophy of nihilism and a total abhorrence for the morals of Christianity, which he regarded as decadent. His philosophy would go on to have a great influence on the thinking of modern academia, where, in spite of his history of mental illness, his ideas are held in great esteem. Nietzsche, a vessel who to this day is revered as one of the great philosophers of the 19th century, was from his own testimony possessed and tortured by demons, mentally and physically, since childhood. His writings declaring the death of God, the meaninglessness of life, the preeminence of the human will, and the coming age of the Superman were all as a result of his many interactions with his demonic tormentors. When he had finished spewing out these demonic doctrines and his utility to Satan came to an end, he was sadly left to suffer for the remaining last 10 years of his life, in a state of total madness and demonic torment, trapped in his own mind. After Satan is finished with his toys, they are in the end simply discarded. Simultaneously, around the same time as Wagner and Nietzsche, there began in the West an explosion of interest in the occult. Beginning with the writings of Helena Blavatsky and the Theosophy movement she subsequently founded, mankind obviously not satisfied with the patently ridiculous claims of the materialist view of the universe as espoused by the Darwinists, with its inherent meaninglessness, sought out as an alternative the secret hidden knowledge of the spirit world. Far from returning to the truth of Christianity, and in continuing rebellion against the source of true knowledge, their Creator God, men embarked upon blending spirituality with the newly discovered faith of evolution. The result being an even greater proliferation of demonic lies and speculations, further tightening the devil's grip on the society and its institutions. By the end of the 19th century, the leadership classes of Germany were fully paganized. Wotan was firmly entrenched, and with him came a host of many other demons, who, having been condemned to the shadows for millennia, flooded back into the spotlight. One is reminded of the declaration of the Lord Jesus Christ concerning the return of unclean spirits in a man. In that, having previously gone out of the man, the spirit returns, and finding that man empty and void, comes back with 7 other spirits more wicked than himself to fill the vacuum, with the latter state of the man being worse than the former. This was the case of Germany, but applied on a national scale. In this instance, the unclean spirits manifesting themselves through excessive displays of national pride, extreme tribalism, and menacing militarism. A case in point illustrating the rapid return of the German nation to a state of rank paganism and demonic domination was demonstrated in the then German African colony of Namibia. In the early 1900s, long before the Nazis and the Holocaust, the Germans, having for years clamoured for their place in the sun, like their British and French neighbours, finally acquired overseas colonies in Africa and Oceania. Instead of, however, uplifting the conditions of the natives placed under their care, the Germans soon found it more beneficial to conduct racial experiments on the population, eventually culminating in the horrific and wholesale massacres of the local tribes called the Herero and Nam people. As a preview of things later to come, the local population were driven into the desert to starve, and the surviving women and children herded into concentration camps where they were worked to death as slave labor and/or medically experimented upon in the name of racial science. The ideas behind Auschwitz and the Holocaust, as demonstrated in these unsettling episodes, were neither original nor exclusive Nazi creations. The German nation, under the stewardship of the malevolent spirit of Wotan, was clearly demonstrating its marked departure from its Christian past, with its moral restraints, and its enthusiastic return to the pagan fold.